Ever wonder what high-stakes global trade negotiations could possibly teach us in procurement? Well, today we're going to break down a real-world, power-based playbook and translate it into some really practical strategies you can actually use.
So, yeah, what can a trade war teach you about negotiating with your suppliers? Well, a lot, actually. The mechanics behind these geopolitical disputes, the leverage, the pressure, the constant threat of just walking away, they offer a pretty powerful case study. And don't worry, we're setting all the politics aside. We're here to focus on just one thing, the strategy.
So why is this so relevant right now? Because let's be honest, the entire global sourcing landscape has been turned completely upside down. The old playbooks, the ones we've relied on for years, they're being seriously challenged, and it's forcing all of us to rethink our most basic strategies.
I mean, just look at the last decade. It's been a perfect storm of disruption for global supply chains. We've had to deal with sudden tariffs popping up, new trade restrictions, and this huge push towards reshoring. For anyone in procurement, this is a whole new ballgame. It is definitely not business as usual.
And what's the result of all that turbulence? Well, it was a massive, and I mean massive, forced reevaluation of supplier strategy at companies pretty much everywhere. Sticking with the status quo, that was no longer an option. It was time to start asking some really tough questions.
And these weren't just little questions for the procurement team to handle. These were boardroom-level concerns. Questions like, are we way too reliant on a single region? Have we been so focused on the lowest cost that we've forgotten about long-term stability? And maybe most importantly, what's our plan B, or C, or D for that matter, if a key supplier just suddenly goes dark?
Okay, so this brings us right to the heart of it. Let's break down the specific negotiation tactics we've all seen play out on the world stage and actually map them one-to-one to the language and strategies we use in procurement.
The playbook was pretty aggressive, and it was crystal clear. First, using tariffs as a straight-up financial weapon. Then, taking the negotiations public to apply maximum pressure. On top of that, setting crazy tight deadlines to force the other side's hand, and all the while, constantly talking up domestic alternatives to prove a willingness to switch.
And here's where you can really see how directly these tactics translate. Using tariffs, that's just like us invoking a penalty clause in a contract. Public escalation, that's a classic, if aggressive, use of buyer power. Pushing for reshoring is basically forced supplier diversification. And those super short timelines? Yep, that's what crisis-driven renegotiation looks like.
All of these tactics really fall under one big umbrella, something we can call a leverage-first negotiation model. Its power comes from one single thing: making the other side genuinely believe that you are 100% willing to walk away from the deal, even if it's going to hurt you in the short term, just to get what you want in the long run.
But here's the million-dollar question. Did it actually work? Well, like any high-pressure strategy, this approach had some pretty big gains and some really serious pains. Let's take a look at the objective scorecard.
Okay, on the plus side, the pressure absolutely forced people to act. It accelerated supplier diversification plans that probably would have taken years to get off the ground. It shot the issue of overdependence straight to the top of the board's agenda, and it really did spur the creation of real, tangible contingency plans.
But, and this is a big but, that action came at a really steep price. Increased costs from all the instability were often passed directly onto the buyers. It sparked retaliation from suppliers, which just shook up the whole market. And maybe the most damaging thing, it totally eroded the predictability and trust that are the absolute bedrock of any stable, long-term supply chain.
This quote just nails the core trade-off perfectly. Applying pressure can be a super powerful tool, but only if you have a viable backup plan. If you don't have credible alternatives, you're not showing strength, you're just gambling. And you're multiplying your own risk.
So let's boil all of this down into 4 clear, actionable lessons that we as procurement leaders can apply directly to our own negotiation strategies.
First and foremost, and this is the big one, your leverage is only as real as your alternatives. In negotiation speak, we call this your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. If you don't have a rock-solid Plan B, then applying all that extreme pressure is just a bluff, and a savvy supplier can and absolutely will call you on.
Next up, you've got to be brutally honest with yourself about how much you actually need your supplier. I mean, using aggressive, leverage-first tactics with a commodity supplier where you have 10 other options, that's one thing. But trying to use that exact same style with a critical sole-source partner, that is an incredibly high-risk gamble that could backfire spectacularly.
Now, lesson 3.
While it might grab headlines in the political world, taking your supplier disputes public is almost always a terrible idea in sourcing. It just burns bridges and destroys the very trust you need for the kind of collaboration and innovation that define truly strong long-term partnerships.
And all of this brings us to our final and maybe most important lesson. The most resilient, the most effective supply chains, they're not built on pure power or pure partnership. They're built on a strategic balance. It's about having the ability to apply leverage when you have to, combined with the wisdom to build collaborative, trust-based relationships for the long haul.
So, the question I want you to take back to your team is this. When you really look at your key suppliers, where on that spectrum, from pure leverage to pure partnership, do you actually need to be? Because getting that balance right, well, that's the ultimate power play. Thanks for tuning in.